Thanks, John. Sorry I missed my first cue, but I'm here this time. So I'm ARIN's Senior Director of Global Registry Knowledge, and you might ask, what in the world does that mean? My focus is on registry accuracy, data integrity, data quality across the registry system, and finding ways to improve it at ARIN. So I'm continually working on things like POC validation and deleting orphaned orgs, et cetera. But the other half of my job is working with law enforcement as ARIN's law enforcement liaison. So I'm going to talk to you a bit about some of the work I'm doing in that area. So ARIN is very committed to this public-private partnership that we have developed and created with law enforcement. We have actually codified that in our strategic plan where it says support law enforcement efforts in a manner compatible with ARIN's mission. So we take this really seriously. We've been directly supporting law enforcement activities, engagement, et cetera, since about 2003 when we had our first interactions with law enforcement. I actually have another slide to talk to you a little bit about that. We do recognize, law enforcement's main purpose as far as the internet goes is the safety and security of the internet and public safety. And ARIN recognizes law enforcement as an integral part of the ARIN and internet communities, and we're very committed to continuing the relationship. So we plan on increasing our direct engagement with law enforcement going forward. We're going to be adding more law enforcement-focused training activities. We do quite a bit of that. I do quite a bit of that now, but we're going to more formalize the process and put more training activities in place in the coming years. So how do we actually support law enforcement? Well, the most obvious one, and the one that comes to everyone's mind initially, is that we publish the WHOIS data that law enforcement uses in their investigations when they're looking to match a particular IP address to a registrant. So they're very concerned with data registry accuracy, obviously. We answer questions on a daily basis for law enforcement. We get calls all the time on the registration services help desk and into our attorneys. Asking simple questions about internet number registrations in WHOIS. They don't understand what they're looking at. They don't know how to find what they need. So we get regional, local, and federal law enforcement calls almost daily. We do cooperate with law enforcement to ensure that they have ongoing access to this information that they need for their investigations. One of the ways we do that is we respond to subpoenas and court orders fairly frequently, actually. And we often assist in the preparation of these requests, in the wording. We were finding that we were getting subpoenas that, I'm sure some of you totally can relate to this, get subpoenas asking for everything under the sun. Really irrelevant information that was not efficient for anyone. So our attorneys often work with law enforcement to craft the correct text for a subpoena or a court order. We also provide training and information sharing, and I'll talk a little bit about that in the presentation. And we work with law enforcement and the internet community, which they are part of the same group, in fact, to improve the integrity and accuracy of the data. So if you go back to the beginning, that's an interesting N at the end of that. Okay, I didn't add that. I don't know where it came from. Anyway, so if you look back at the beginning, where we first started our interactions, it was 2003. And the FBI showed up at ARIN's office. They knocked on the door. They came inside. They flashed their badge, and they said, we want to see this guy, this person that worked for me. And so the office was, all abuzz, like, the FBI's here. They need to talk to someone. This is the first time that ever happened. So I went up there because it was one of my staff, and I was like, can I help you? And they said, yeah, we're here. We need you to give us some IPv4 addresses, and we'll just take them with us and leave. Won't take more than 5 minutes. And we're like, I don't think so. Let's sit down and talk about this. So we went in our conference room, explained how the process works, what they needed to do. We got a better understanding of what they needed themselves, how things worked. And basically, the dialogue began from there. That was honestly our first direct interaction. And it has steadily evolved since then. We have built quite the relationship. So in fact, in 2004, we were asked to come to teach at the FBI Training Academy at Quantico, which is where all the elite law enforcement from around the US go for training, cyber training, and they wanted us to be part of that. So I would go down there quarterly. I would often take a tech guy with me too, so we could really explain some of the technical aspects of the internet and then more of the sort of internet ecosystem and how the RIRs work. We did that from 2004 to 2006 until they sort of changed up their curriculum. In 2005, for the very first time, we had law enforcement show up at an ARIN meeting. They, through our communications, our ongoing communications, they were aware that there was a policy called Directory Services Overhaul, which would have denied them access to information they use every day. And who is? It was going to basically privatize a lot of the customer reassignment information. So they came en masse. They came from Canada and the US, and we had both criminal and civil law enforcement show up. And they all spoke at the mic, and they said, this is how we use it, this is why we need it. You guys might not understand, but we really need you to hear us. And our community did hear them, totally responded. It was a really great communication, and the policy did not pass, by the way. So that was the first time they ever showed up. So we've been building this relationship all of these years. In 2006 to the present, we've been doing these training and information sharing sessions with law enforcement and government entities. And I listed just a few of them, the obvious ones, DEA, Homeland Security, FTC, et cetera, et cetera. There's lots more, but I just sort of named a few. So we started more formally doing that in 2006. 2008, we got a request from Bobby Flame, our FBI contact, and he said, RIPE NCC has this great government working group and this great government roundtable, and we should be replicating that here. There should be more open dialogue. So Bobby approached Kathy Hanley and I, and we sort of helped him, facilitated him in creating the ARIN Government Working Group. And we had a lot of support from Steve Ryan as well, who always offers us his fabulous office in Washington, D.C., which is where most of our attendees come from. So it was basically established to facilitate the public-private partnership. The main purpose is education and information sharing. And the goals for the law enforcement, the part of law enforcement is to ensure the safety and security of the internet. And they thought this was a great forum for public-private exchange of information. The participants were both civil and criminal law enforcement, government regulatory bodies, and private industry. Sometimes we would invite private industry in for technical talks, information sharing, education. So just a couple of examples. As I said, law enforcement has attended meetings since 2005, and they've actually showed up at every single ARIN meeting since that time, except for this one. This is the very first time. The only time I've ever done a law enforcement presentation, they don't show up. But it doesn't figure. But anyway, they're all quite busy, and there's been a lot of things that have been coming up for them. So, and there's some changeover and turnover in staff. Law enforcement, one of the things they do and what they've done is they've met a lot of the ARIN community, and they have worked with ARIN, us as facilitators, staff, and community members to actually make policy proposals and suggestions. One of the proposals that came up, I don't even remember how many years ago, was submitted by the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration. It was at a time we were running out of IPv4 address space. They were concerned because we were getting an influx of out-of-region requests, a lot of them from Asia and a lot of them from places that they have issues with. So they said, we didn't have any policy that said whether we should issue to out-of-region requesters or not. Nothing was clear in the policy. So they submitted this policy and said, you need more stringent criteria. The policy morphed, it changed, but it was eventually ratified by ARIN's Board of Trustees and is in effect today. So that was a success story, really. And then ARIN works with the FBI in ongoing cases, different types of cybercrime, fraud, hijackings, et cetera. So that's just some of the examples. I want to touch on global RIR and law enforcement collaboration. As we all know, cybercrime tends to be transnational. It's multi-jurisdictional. It crosses multiple countries, et cetera. So there's a few of us at the RIRs who actually focus on law enforcement liaising, and we decided that we should continually be working together to support law enforcement on a more global level, because that's how they work it. We thought we should be doing the same. So we continually collaborate. We recently worked with law enforcement on WHOIS accuracy and enhancement policies. Basically, it was POC validation policy. ARIN had one in place, but we worked to enhance that to make it more effective and streamline it. The RIPE NCC had a similar policy that was submitted by Europol. So that one has gone into effect, and the policy has now been carried to the other 3 RIRs, and I believe it's gaining consensus in the APNIC region. It's a slight variation on a POC validation. And it's also being discussed in AFRIC and in LACNIC. So that's a good collaboration, a good example. And just, again, some recent examples of our engagement, the things we do together. We often do joint presentations and participate at a variety of events, including ICANN's Public Safety Working Group. Anne Rochelle mentioned that yesterday. It's civil and criminal law enforcement arm of the GAC at ICANN. E-Crimes Congress, it's global law enforcement. Actually, Paul Rendek got that one started for us, and we would speak at that every year in London, all 5 of the RIRs. Interpol, Europol. Interpol Americas, just a few weeks ago, we were asked to be part of a panel, LACNIC, ICANN, and ARIN. And we all support each other's government working groups. So these are some of the collaborations we're doing on a global level. Some of our recent activities, this is a cool one. I have been working with Carlos Alvarez. He's the Director of Security, Stability, and Resiliency Engagement at ICANN. And he does a lot of law enforcement training, and he said that he started getting questions. You know, he only presents sort of the ICANN domain part of things. That's what they focus on. And he started getting questions about ARIN and what do they do, what does the registry do? So we talked about it and we decided we should start collaborating on some joint trainings. So we did our first one at the NCFTA, really cool organization. It consists of the FBI and then private industry, banking industry, and other security experts. And that was a full-day training, really went well. We have one at the FBI field office in New York City next week. And we have one coming up with the Royal Canadian Mounted Police as well. I had reached out to them and they were interested, and then I didn't hear anything, and we were at a meeting, which I'm going to go to the next bullet. We were at a cybercrime conference that we often go to, Interpol, Europol, speaking to some RCMP guys, and they were asking a lot of questions, and, you know, how do you do this, and why do you do this, and I said, well, you know, we've offered to come up to Ottawa and train you guys. He immediately shot off an email to his colleague, who is my colleague, and I got an email the next day saying, oh, you're in, we need you, this group needs you, and this group wants to see you. So it was a great way, you know, networking works. The other kind of funny thing from that discussion was another one of his colleagues from the RCMP came up and was saying, well, why do you do what you do? And why is the US government even involved in the running of the internet? Like, who are they anyway? And I was like, let me just explain a little history. And he said, oh, no. The internet was created in the 90s by a Swiss guy. And I said, okay, now I know where I need to focus my efforts. So I came back and created a new slide on the history of the internet and administration. So, but these are the kinds of things you learn when you're talking to these kind of people. So. Anyway, we go to trust community conferences like the ITSG, which is mentioned above, which is, again, an FBI public-private group, MOG, which is coming up next week, ICANN Public Safety Working Group, we attend all their meetings, and the Caribbean Forum Justice Sector Group. That's a new thing. I think Bevel mentioned it yesterday. It's part of the Caribbean Forum, but it's focusing on law enforcement. So we're going to be reaching out to more law enforcement within the Caribbean. We had our inaugural meeting in Miami. We had law enforcement from the US, Canada, and the Caribbean, and it was a really successful day of engaging. So we plan on doing more of that work. Looking forward, as I mentioned, formalizing and increasing law enforcement training, doing more engagement within the Caribbean. Bevel and I we're supposed to meet today to talk about 2 meetings that we're coming up to next year that we want to organize in the region. Doing more webinars and video training focused, you know, at law enforcement needs. Those are things I've been planning on doing, and I think I'll be able to get to this year. We have a law enforcement webpage that I put up. It's kind of simplistic. I would like to enhance that. I will continue our engagement with our global RIR law enforcement liaison colleagues, and we'll continue supporting the Public Safety Working Group. These are just some of the high-level things that I'm going to be focusing on. So that's all I have. Any questions? Wes
George, Bike Grid. Have you, either in the past or looking at it in the future, considered interacting with the International Association of Chiefs of Police, IACP?
I actually do that. Jim is a good friend of mine, and he's one of the guys. And actually, their board of directors was at our meeting in Miami. Yes, we do. I've been invited to their meetings as well to speak. I just didn't put it on there. there,
Yeah,
it's a
'cause
good one.
I was going to suggest that that would be a way to,
Get with the regional.
because you have a certain sort of audience that self-selects in the cybercrime community. This would get it to a broader audience of folks that would need to see this.
Absolutely. And thank you for the suggestion, because I really do need to hit him up again and get to that next meeting. So
Great,
thank you.
thank you.
Thanks. Anything else?
Over to you, Eureka, New Mexico. Are you working with first responders as well?
We haven't at all, actually. Like I said, we've done a lot of work on the federal level, some on the regional level with the International Association of Chiefs of Police, a lot on the global level, but we haven't really gotten to, I don't have contacts, so if you do, if you have any suggestions, I'd love to hear them. I'll
Sure.
give you my
Thank you.
email after. Thank you.
We'll get together offline.
Yeah, thanks. Anyone else? Nope. Okay. Thanks for
you.
your time.
Thank you, Leslie.